The emergency alarm echoed through the halls of the Galactic Coalition headquarters. Admiral Kethvar's four arms moved quickly across his control panel as he watched another star system disappear from the galaxy map, the red dots marking dead. Worlds now covered nearly a quarter of known space. "How many ships did we lose at Rigel 7? He asked his aide. 15,000 vessels, sir. The entire Third Fleet." The young Zephyrian's voice shook. "The Void Scourge adapted to our weapons. Again, they turned our own plasma cannons against us." Kethavar closed his eyes. 15,000 ships meant millions of lives lost. The Coalition had been fighting the Void Scourge for 3 years now, and they were losing badly. The enemy wasn't just another hostile species. They were something far worse. The Scourge looked like a nightmare come to life. Massive black ships that moved like living things. Smaller craft that swarmed like insects. Worst of all, they learned from every battle. Whatever weapons the Coalition used, the Scourge found ways to turn them around or make them useless. "Sir, the Council is calling another emergency meeting," his aide said. Kethvar nodded. Another meeting meant more desperate plans that wouldn't work. The Coalition had tried everything. They sent their best fleets. They used their most advanced weapons. They even tried to negotiate, but the Scourge never responded to any attempts at communication. The main council chamber was packed with representatives from hundreds of species. The tall, crystal-like beings from Altair stood next to the furry Kelthans. The gas-breathing vortex floated in their special suits while the plant-like Verdians swayed gently in their pots. At the far end of the chamber sat 3 humans. Most council members barely looked at the human delegation. Earth had only been discovered 50 years ago, and many species still thought of humans as primitives. They had no advanced technology. Their ships were small and crude. Their weapons were outdated by galactic standards, but they had something. That worried the other species, a reputation for winning impossible battles. "The situation is critical," announced Chancellor Vexithol, his tentacles writhing with stress. "We've lost contact with 17 more systems this week. At this rate, the Scourge will reach the core worlds within 6 months." Murmurs of fear filled the chamber. The core worlds were the heart of galactic civilization. If they fell, everything would be lost. "We need new strategies," said General Hrethka, her scales changing color with emotion. "Our current tactics aren't working." "What tactics?" snapped Admiral Corwin from his floating chair. "We throw ships at them. They destroy our ships. We throw more ships. They destroy those too. This isn't strategy. This is suicide." The argument that followed was loud and pointless. The same species said the same things they always said. The Zephyrians wanted to attack with everything they had. The Crystalline Collective suggested studying the enemy more. The Kelthans proposed retreating to the outer rim. Admiral Chen, the leader of the human delegation, listened quietly. He was a calm man, with gray hair and steady eyes. Next to him sat Counselor Rodriguez, a woman with kind features and intelligent eyes. The third human, Dr. Martinez, took notes on an old-fashioned tablet. "What about evacuation?" suggested someone from the back. "We could move everyone to the Andromeda Galaxy." "With what ships?" Corwin replied. "Half our fleet is space dust, Chancellor." Vexthul raised his arms for silence. "We've tried conventional warfare. We've tried advanced weapons. We've tried everything our combined knowledge can produce. Perhaps..." He paused, looking uncomfortable. "Perhaps it's time to consider other options." The chamber fell silent. Everyone knew what he meant, even though nobody wanted to say it out loud. They were talking about asking the humans for help. "The humans have an unusual approach to conflict," Vexthul continued carefully. "Their military history shows a pattern of victory against superior forces." "They're primitives," hissed General Hrethka. "What could they possibly do that we haven't tried?" Admiral Chen stood up slowly. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, but everyone heard him clearly. "We've been watching your war for 3 years," he said. "You fight like you're playing a game with rules. The Scourge doesn't follow rules, and you do." Korwun's tone was mocking. "We make our own rules," Chen replied simply. Counselor Rodriguez stood next to Chen. "Earth offers to help," she said, "but we have conditions." The chamber erupted in angry voices. How dare these primitives make demands? What could they possibly want? Vexthul raised his arms again. "What conditions?" "Complete operational control of any forces we deploy," Rodriguez said. "Access to your technology databases, and the right to use whatever methods we think necessary." "Absolutely not," Hrethka snapped. "We won't hand over our most advanced weapons to primitives." "Then you'll lose," Chen said calmly. "Your advanced weapons haven't worked for 3 years. Why would they start working now?" Dr. Martinez looked up from his tablet. "We've run computer simulations based on your battle reports. Your current strategy gives you a 3.7% chance of victory. Those aren't good odds." "What would you do differently?" asked a voice from the crowd. Chen smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. "We'd stop fighting fair." The debate that followed lasted 6 hours. Species after species argued against trusting humans with advanced technology. They worried about giving weapons to a species that still fought wars with chemical explosives and metal bullets. But as the debate dragged on, more reports came in. Another system lost. Another fleet destroyed. Another 1,000,000 lives gone. Finally, Chancellor Vexthul called for a vote. The chamber fell silent as representatives pressed buttons on their chairs. The results appeared on the main screen. The measure passed by just 12 votes. "Very well," Vexthul said, looking tired. "The Coalition formally requests Earth's assistance against the Void Scourge. Admiral Chen, what do you need?" Chen stood up again. "Give us 3 weeks to prepare. Send us complete technical specifications for your ships and weapons, and clear a path to the front lines." 3 weeks? Korwun sounded outraged. "The Scourge could take 5 more systems in 3 weeks. Then you better hope we're worth the wait," Rodriguez said. As the council session ended, representatives filed out in small groups, talking quietly among themselves. Most looked worried, some looked angry, a few looked hopeful. The humans gathered, their things slowly, ignoring the stares and whispered comments around them. "Think we can actually do this?" Dr. Martinez asked quietly. "We better," Chen replied, "because if we can't, there won't be a galaxy left to save." Counselor Rodriguez looked at the star map one more time. So many red dots, so many dead worlds, so much death and destruction. But Earth had faced impossible odds before. During the resource wars, when half the planet was on fire. During the colony rebellion, when Earth's own settlements turned against them. During the AI crisis, when their own machines tried to destroy them. Humans had a talent for surviving things that should have killed them. They had a gift for winning wars they should have lost. Now the galaxy would find out if that talent worked against an enemy from beyond the stars. As the humans left the council chamber, Admiral Chen was already making plans. He thought about the ships they would need, the weapons they would modify, and the tactics that would horrify their new allies. The galaxy wanted Earth's help. They were about to get it. They just might not like what that help looked like. Captain Sarah Kim stared at the massive Void Scourge ship through her view screen. The enemy vessel looked like someone had taken a normal spaceship and twisted it into a nightmare. Black metal curved in impossible ways. Strange lights pulsed along its hull like a heartbeat. Smaller ships swarmed around it like angry insects. "Target acquired," reported her weapons officer. "Should we fire?" "Not yet," Sarah said. "Wait for my signal." Her ship, the UES Defiance, hung in space next to a damaged Coalition cruiser. The alien crew was probably wondering why the humans weren't attacking. After all, they had a clear shot. at the enemy. But Admiral Chen had taught his captains to think differently. Sometimes the best attack wasn't an attack at all. "Captain," her communications officer called out, "the Zephyrian ship is asking why we're not firing." "Tell them we're studying the target," Sarah replied. 3 weeks earlier, when the humans first arrived at the front lines, their alien allies had been shocked by what they saw. Earth's fleet was tiny compared to coalition forces, only 50 ships where the aliens had thousands. The human vessels looked crude and patched together, with modifications bolted onto their hulls. Admiral Chen's flagship, the UES Determination, was the strangest of all. Its hull was covered with equipment that the aliens didn't recognize. Sensor arrays pointed in all directions, communication dishes that could intercept signals across multiple frequencies, and weapons that looked like they belonged in a scrapyard. "What are those modifications?" Admiral Kethvar had asked when Chen's fleet first arrived. "Tools," Chen had replied simply. The first battle had been a disaster for traditional tactics. The coalition fleet attacked the Scourge head-on, just like they always did. The enemy adapted quickly, turning the aliens' own weapons against them. Within hours, 3 coalition fleets were retreating in defeat. But the humans didn't retreat. They scattered. Instead of fighting as one big fleet, the human ships split up and started doing things that made no sense. Some ships flew directly into asteroid fields. Others headed toward the system's sun. A few actually flew toward the Scourge fleet, but instead of attacking, they broadcast strange signals. "What are they doing?" Kethvar had demanded. "Learning," Chen had answered. Now, 2 weeks later, Captain Sarah Kim was putting that learning to use. Her ship had been tracking this particular Scourge vessel for 3 days, not to attack it, but to understand it. Dr. Martinez, who was serving as the fleet's science advisor, had made an incredible discovery. The Void Scourge ships weren't just machines. They were alive, in a way that nobody had expected. The energy patterns are consistent with biological neural networks, Martinez had explained to the coalition commanders. But they're fused with quantum processors. It's like someone took a brain and turned it into a computer. "That's impossible," General Hrethka had said. "A lot of things are impossible until they happen," Chen had replied. The breakthrough came when human communication specialists, led by Lieutenant Commander Torres, managed to intercept Scourge transmissions. The aliens had tried this before, and found only static. But the humans used different methods. Instead of trying to decode the signals like data, they analyzed them like music, like poetry, like the confused cries of something in pain. "Captain," Torres called out from her station, "I'm getting those patterns again. The same ones we detected from the damaged Scourge ship yesterday." Sarah nodded. Yesterday they had found a Scourge vessel that had been badly damaged in a battle with coalition forces. Instead of finishing it off, Sarah had ordered her crew to study it. What they found changed everything. The damaged ship had been broadcasting a signal, not orders or tactical data, but something that sounded almost like crying, like a hurt animal, calling for help. "All ships, this is Admiral Chen," came the voice over the comm system. "Begin Operation Breakthrough." Sarah smiled. Finally, they were going to try something that had never been attempted before. Instead of attacking the Scourge, they were going to try talking to it. "Torres, begin transmission sequence," Sarah ordered. Lieutenant Commander Torres had spent 2 weeks working with Dr. Martinez to create a message that the Scourge might understand. They started with mathematical concepts, then moved to basic symbols, and finally attempted something more complex. The message they sent was simple. "We hear your pain. We want to help." For long minutes, nothing happened. The Scourge ship continued, its patrol pattern around the gas giant. Its smaller escorts maintained their formation. Then something changed. "Captain, the enemy ship has stopped moving," reported the helm officer. On the view screen, the massive Scourge vessel hung motionless in space. Its light still pulsed, but the pattern was different, slower, more deliberate. "I'm detecting a response." "Signal," Torres said, excitement in her voice. "It's not like anything we've seen before." Put it through the speakers. The sound that filled the bridge was unlike anything they had heard from the Scourge before. It wasn't the harsh static of their usual transmissions. This was musical, almost beautiful, but underneath the melody was something else. Sadness, loneliness, and something that might have been hope. "Are they trying to communicate?" asked the weapons officer. "They're already communicating," Sarah said. "The question is whether we're smart enough to understand." Across the fleet, human ships were having similar encounters. The Scourge vessels were responding to their communication attempts, not with weapons, but with signals. Complex patterns of light and sound that suggested intelligence far beyond what anyone had expected. Admiral Chen watched from his command chair as reports came in from his captains. After years of fighting, first contact was finally happening, but not in the way anyone had imagined. "Sir," reported his communication officer, "we're receiving a massive data transmission from the Scourge command ship." "What kind of data?" "It appears to be memories, sir. Images and sounds. Like they're trying to show us something." Chen stood up. This was the moment everything would change. Either the humans would succeed in making contact with an enemy that had destroyed hundreds of worlds, or they would fail and doom the galaxy. Put it on the main screen. The view screen filled with images that took everyone's breath away. Beautiful worlds with crystalline cities that touched the clouds. Beings that looked like they were made of living light, moving through gardens of impossible beauty. Technology that seemed to grow like plants, organic and mechanical at the same time. But then the images changed. The beautiful worlds were burning. The beings of light were screaming as their bodies twisted into metal and shadow. The living technology turned into weapons of destruction. "My God," whispered Dr. Martinez. "They're showing us what happened to them." The final image was the most heartbreaking of all. A single being, half organic and half machine, reaching out toward the camera with desperate eyes that pleaded for understanding. Then the transmission ended. The bridge was silent for a long moment. Everyone was trying to process what they had just seen. The Void Scourge wasn't an invading army. They were victims. "Admiral," Torres said quietly, "I'm receiving another signal. It's much simpler this time." "What does it say?" Torres looked up, with tears in her eyes. "Help us." Admiral Chen felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Not the satisfaction of victory or the relief of survival. Something deeper. Something that reminded him why humans had always been willing to fight for the underdog, even when it seemed hopeless. "All ships," he said into his comm. "Stand down weapons. Begin peaceful contact protocols. And get me a direct line to Coalition. Command. They need to know that this war just became something completely different." As the human fleet moved into formation around the Scourge vessels, the galaxy was about to learn that sometimes the greatest victory came not from destroying your enemy, but from discovering that your enemy was never your enemy at all. The celebration in the Coalition headquarters was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Beings from hundreds of worlds danced, sang, and shared their joy in ways that would have seemed impossible just weeks before. The threat that had terrified them for 3 years was finally over. Admiral Kethvar stood on the observation deck, watching fireworks explode in the space around the station. Each burst of light represented another system that was safe, another world where children could sleep without fear. "Remarkable," said Chancellor Vex Thule, approaching with what passed for a smile on his face. "I admit I doubted the human approach. But they succeeded where we failed." Below them in the main hall, Admiral Chen was surrounded by reporters from across the galaxy. The human looked uncomfortable with all the attention, but he answered their questions patiently. "Admiral Chen, how did humanity know that communication was possible?" asked a Zephyrian journalist. "We didn't know," Chen replied honestly. "But we had to try. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over while expecting different results." The crowd laughed. It was an old human saying, but it made sense to everyone. "What will happen to the Scourge now?" asked another reporter. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the lead negotiator for the peace talks, stepped forward. She was a small woman with gray hair and kind eyes, but she had accomplished something no one thought possible. "The beings we called the Scourge have agreed to withdraw to the outer rim of the galaxy," she explained. "They want to heal from what was done to them. We've promised to help however we can." The celebration continued for hours. Species that had been enemies for centuries toasted. Together, the Kelthans performed their victory dance while the Crystalline Collective sang their harmonies of peace. Even the normally serious Vortex were telling jokes. But in a quiet office far from the celebration, a different kind of meeting was taking place. Counselor Maria Santos sat across from Director Leshka, head of Coalition Intelligence. Between them lay a stack of documents that could change everything. "Are you certain about this?" Santos asked. Director Leshka's scales shifted nervously. "Our deep space archaeologists have been investigating the outer rim for months. The evidence is clear. The Scourge, the Eternum Collective as they called themselves, they didn't attack first." Santos picked up one of the reports. It was from an archaeological team that had been studying dead worlds in the outer rim, worlds that had been destroyed long before the Scourge War began. "According to this, the Eternum were peaceful," Santos said. "They had withdrawn from galactic affairs to pursue their technological evolution. Yes, they achieved a perfect fusion of biological and artificial intelligence. They became something beyond what any of us thought possible." Leshka paused. "And then coalition forces attacked them." The report was clear and terrible. 3,000 years ago, when the coalition was younger and more aggressive, they had launched a secret military operation called Project Silence. The goal was to eliminate any species that might pose a future threat to coalition expansion. The Eternum were peaceful, but their technology was so advanced that future coalition leaders might not be able to control them. So they decided to destroy them first. They used biological weapons, Santos read from the report. Nanoviruses designed to corrupt the Eternum's biodigital fusion process. "It was supposed to kill them quickly," Leshka said quietly. "Instead, it trapped them between life and death. Their organic minds were poisoned, but their digital components kept them alive. For 3,000 years, they've been trapped in bodies that feel only pain, driven mad by isolation and suffering." Santos set down the report. She felt sick. The monsters that had terrorized the galaxy weren't monsters at all. They were victims of the galaxy's greatest crime. How many people know about this? Very few. The records were classified at the highest levels. Most of the species involved in Project Silence are extinct now. Those that remain. They've kept the secret. Santos thought about the celebration happening just a few floors below. All those people celebrating peace, not knowing that their governments had caused the war in the first place. "What about the humans?" Leshka asked. "Do they know?" "I don't think so, but they will. They're too thorough not to find out eventually." Santos was right. At that very moment, Dr. Martinez was in the Coalition archives, cross-referencing data from the Scourge, communications with historical records. He was looking for clues about who the Eternum had been before their transformation. What he found made his blood run cold. "Admiral," he called Chen on his communicator. "You need to see this. Now." Chen arrived at the archives within minutes, along with Captain Kim and Dr. Vasquez. They found Martinez staring at a holographic display showing the galaxy as it was 3,000 years ago. "I've been trying to understand the Eternum's origins," Martinez explained. "The images they showed us, those beautiful crystal cities. I thought they looked familiar." He pointed to a cluster of stars in the outer rim. "This is where the Eternum lived. 27 star systems with perfect ecological balance, advanced civilization, no conflicts with neighboring species. And then what happened? Kim asked. Martinez changed the display to show the same region 100 years later. All 27 star systems were marked as dead zones, quarantined, no coalition ships allowed. According to official records, they were destroyed by a plague, a natural disaster. But I dug deeper. He pulled up classified files that required his highest-level clearance to access. Project Silence, a joint operation between 12 coalition member species. Goal: neutralize potential future threats to galactic stability. The room was silent as the humans read through the files. The clinical language couldn't hide the horror of what had been done. An entire civilization destroyed because they might someday become inconvenient. They were peaceful, Vasquez said, her voice barely a whisper. They never threatened anyone. But they had technology that scared the coalition leadership, Martinez replied. So they decided to commit genocide. Admiral Chen sat down heavily. And we just helped cover it up. What do you mean? Kim asked. Think about it. We convinced the Scourge to withdraw quietly. No public trials, no demands for justice. Just a peaceful settlement that makes everyone happy. Chen's voice was bitter. The perfect ending that lets everyone forget how this started. Dr. Vasquez looked at the celebration visible through the window. They don't know. All those people celebrating peace. They don't know that their governments murdered an entire civilization. And if we tell them? Martinez asked. Chaos, Chen replied. Civil war. The coalition falls apart. Billions die in the fighting that follows. And if we don't tell them? Then we become part of the cover-up. We help them bury the truth. The four humans stood in silence, each struggling with an impossible choice. They had saved the galaxy by ending the war. But the price of that salvation might be their own souls. There's something else, Martinez said quietly. I've been analyzing the Eternum's condition. The damage done to them by the bioweapons. Can it be healed? Vasquez asked. Maybe, but it would take time, decades, possibly centuries, and it would require technology that the Coalition has but won't share. Because sharing it would mean admitting what they did, Kim said. Chen stood up and walked to the window. Below, the celebration continued. Beings from across the galaxy, happy and safe, believing that their leaders were heroes who had saved them from an ancient evil. We have a choice to make, he said finally. We can keep the secret and let sleeping dogs lie, or we can tell the truth and watch the galaxy burn. What kind of choice is that? Vasquez asked. The kind that defines who we are, Chen replied. The question is, what kind of people do we want to be? As the fireworks continued to explode in the darkness of space, 4 humans faced a decision that would shape the future of the galaxy. And in the outer rim, the beings once known as the Eternum waited to see if justice was still possible in a universe that had forgotten what justice meant. Earth's High Council chamber was quieter than it had ever been. The 13 members sat around the circular table, each one struggling with the weight of what they had learned. Holographic displays showed the evidence that Dr. Martinez had uncovered. Star charts, archaeological reports, and most damning of all, the classified files from Project Silence. Counselor Maria Santos looked tired. She had been leading the investigation for 2 weeks now, ever since Admiral Chen's team discovered the truth. What they found was worse than anyone had imagined. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, said Counselor Thompson, his voice shaky. The Coalition didn't just commit genocide 3,000 years ago. They've been actively covering it up ever since. That's correct, Santos replied. The Eternum were never a threat to anyone. They were scientists and philosophers who wanted to be left alone. But their technology scared the Coalition leadership, so they decided to destroy them. Counselor Patel shook her head. The bioweapons were designed to kill them quickly. How could the Coalition not know that their victims would survive as the Scourge? Dr. Martinez, attending as an expert witness, answered from his seat at the side of the chamber. They did know. Within 50 years of the attack, Coalition scouts reported strange activities in the Outer Rim. Ships that moved in impossible ways. Technology that seemed alive. The Coalition leadership chose to classify it and ignore it. For 3,000 years? Counselor Zhang sounded incredulous. For 3,000 years, Santos confirmed. Every time the Eternum tried to make contact, Coalition forces drove them back. Every time they asked for help, they were labeled as hostile invaders. The galaxy's greatest crime became its greatest lie. Counselor Rodriguez, who had been part of the original delegation to the Coalition, spoke quietly. And now we're part of that lie. By negotiating a quiet peace, we helped them cover it up. The chamber fell silent. Everyone knew she was right. The celebration that had swept the galaxy wasn't just premature. It was built on a foundation of carefully hidden murder. What? About the other species? Asked Counselor Kim. Surely some of them know the truth? Santos activated a new display. We've identified 7 species that were directly involved in Project Silence. 3 are extinct. 2 have been absorbed into larger governments. The Zephyrians and the Altarians still exist, but their leadership has been keeping the secret for millennia. And the others? They genuinely don't know. The Coalition has very good information control. Most species believe exactly what they've been told, that the Scourge was an ancient evil that mysteriously appeared and started destroying worlds. Counselor Adams leaned forward. What about evidence? There must be more than what Dr. Martinez found. There is, Santos replied. The Coalition has been very careful to destroy physical evidence, but they couldn't erase everything. There are archaeological sites in the Outer Rim that prove the Eternum were peaceful. There are medical records showing the effects of the bioweapons. There are even some survivors. Survivors? Several council members spoke at once. Dr. Martinez nodded grimly. Not all Eternum were affected by the bioweapons. Some were off-world when the attack happened. Others were in deep space on exploration missions. They've been hiding in the Outer Rim for 3,000 years, watching their transformed people suffer and unable to help. The implications hit the Council like a physical blow. There were witnesses, people who had seen their entire civilization destroyed by an unprovoked attack. People who had been labeled as terrorists and murderers when they tried to seek justice. How many? Santos asked quietly. We estimate around 10,000 individuals scattered across the Outer Rim. They've been trying to find a cure for their people while avoiding Coalition forces. Counselor Thompson stood up and began pacing. This changes everything. We're not just talking about ancient history. We're talking about ongoing crimes, cover-ups, false imprisonment, and genocide, added Counselor Patel. Let's not forget that part. Santos activated another display showing current Coalition military positions. It gets worse. Coalition intelligence knows that we're investigating. They've been monitoring our communications and tracking our research. How do you know? Because they contacted me yesterday. Santos's voice was grim. Director Leshika requested a private meeting. He made it very clear that Earth's continued membership in the Coalition depends on our discretion. The threat was obvious. If Earth revealed the truth about Project Silence, they would be expelled from the Coalition, branded as troublemakers and conspiracy theorists, cut off from galactic trade and technology. They're blackmailing us, Counselor Zhang said angrily. They're protecting themselves, Santos replied, the same way they've been protecting themselves for 3,000 years. Counselor Rodriguez looked at the star charts showing Coalition space. Hundreds of worlds, trillions of beings living peaceful lives under a government built on lies and murder. What happens if we reveal the truth? She asked. Dr. Martinez had run computer simulations to answer that exact question. Best case scenario, the Coalition government falls, but it's replaced by something better. Worst case, complete collapse, civil war, economic disaster, billions of deaths. And the Eternum? They get justice, but at the cost of galactic stability. And If we stay silent, the galaxy remains peaceful and prosperous, but the Eternum continue to suffer, and we become accomplices to their suffering. The council debated for hours. Some members argued for revealing the truth immediately, regardless of the consequences. Others insisted that galactic stability was more important than ancient injustices. A few suggested finding a middle ground, gradually releasing information over time. But as the discussion continued, one thing became clear. There was no easy answer. "We need to hear from Admiral Chen," Santos said finally. "His team made first contact. His opinion carries weight." The Admiral appeared on the main screen from his ship in the Outer Rim. Behind him, the bridge of the UES Determination was busy, with activity as his crew continued their work with the Eternum. "Admiral, what's your assessment?" Santos asked. Chen was quiet for a moment before answering. "I've spent the last 2 weeks talking with Eternum survivors, learning about who they were before the attack, seeing what they've become. And they don't want revenge, Counselor. They want their people healed. They want the truth acknowledged. They want to make sure this never happens again. Can their people be healed? Dr. Vasquez believes so. But it would require resources that only the Coalition can provide: medical technology, bioreconstruction facilities, quantum processing cores." Chen paused. "Equipment that the Coalition will never give us if they think we're a threat to their secret." The terrible irony was obvious. The only way to help the Eternum was to work with the same organization that had destroyed them. "Admiral, in your professional opinion, what should we do?" Chen looked directly into the camera. "I became a soldier to protect innocent people. The Eternum are innocent people who have been suffering for 3,000 years. If we stay silent, we fail them. If we speak up, we might save them, but destroy everything else." "That's not an answer, Admiral." "Yes, it is," Chen replied quietly. "It's the only answer that matters. We have to choose between justice and peace, between truth and stability, between doing what's right and doing what's safe." "And what choice would you make?" Admiral Chen was silent for a long moment. Behind him, his crew continued their work, establishing communication protocols with beings that had been labeled as monsters for millennia. "I'd choose the truth," he said finally. "Because if we don't stand up for the innocent, who will?" The transmission ended, leaving the council alone with their impossible decision. Outside the chamber windows, Earth turned slowly in space, peaceful and beautiful. A world that had fought its way to the stars and earned its place among the great civilizations of the galaxy. Now they had to decide what that place was worth, and whether some things were more important than peace. The Galactic Assembly had never been so quiet. Every seat was filled. Representatives from over 400 species sat in perfect silence as Counselor Maria Santos walked to the central podium. The weight of what she was about to do pressed down on her shoulders like a physical thing. In the gallery above, Admiral Chen watched with his senior staff. Dr. Vasquez gripped the railing so tightly her knuckles were white. Captain Kim kept checking her communication device, waiting for orders that might never come. Dr. Martinez had his tablet ready, prepared to display evidence that would change everything. "Distinguished delegates," Santos began, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. "3 weeks ago, we celebrated the end of the Scourge War. We honored the peace that was achieved through negotiation and understanding. Today, I stand before you to reveal the truth about that war and the lies that made it possible." Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Chancellor Vex Thul leaned forward, his tentacles writhing with concern. Director Leshika sat frozen in his chair, knowing what was coming but powerless to stop it. "The beings we called the Void Scourge were once known as the Eternum Collective," Santos continued. "They were not invaders. They were not monsters. They were victims of the greatest crime in galactic history." The first displays appeared on screens around the chamber, archaeological evidence from the Outer Rim, images of beautiful crystal cities and peaceful beings of living light, the Eternum as they had been before Project Silence destroyed them. 3,000 years ago, Coalition forces launched a preemptive attack against the Eternum homeworlds. Santos said, they used biological weapons designed to corrupt the Eternum's bio-digital fusion process. The goal was genocide. The result was 3 millennia of suffering. The chamber erupted. Delegates shouted questions and denials. Security guards moved to maintain order. But Santos continued speaking, her voice cutting through the chaos. The evidence is undeniable. Project Silence was real. The cover-up was real. And the Coalition leadership has known the truth for 3,000 years. Admiral Kethvar stood up from his seat. This is outrageous. These accusations are true, interrupted a new voice from the back of the chamber. Everyone turned to see an elderly Zephyrian rising slowly from her seat. Admiral Sekthara was one of the oldest serving officers in the Coalition fleet. Her family had served in government for over 2,000 years. I am Sekthara, daughter of Vekthara, who was one of the planners of Project Silence, she said, her voice shaking with age and emotion. Everything the human says is true. My family has carried this shame for generations. The chamber fell silent again. If Sekthara was confirming the accusations, then they couldn't be dismissed as human lies or conspiracy theories. Santos nodded gratefully and continued. The survivors of the attack have been hiding in the Outer Rim for 3,000 years. They've watched their transformed people suffer, unable to help, labeled as terrorists when they tried to seek aid. More evidence appeared on the screens. Medical records showing the effects of the bioweapons. Communications intercepts proving that Coalition leadership knew about the survivors. Archaeological reports that had been classified for millennia. But this isn't just about the past, Santos said. This is about who we are now, about whether we choose truth or comfortable lies, about whether justice matters more than convenience. Chancellor Vexthul stood up. Even if these accusations are true, revealing them now would destabilize the entire galaxy. Millions could die in the chaos that follows. And if we stay silent, Santos asked, then we become part of the crime. We help bury the truth and abandon the innocent. The debate that followed was unlike anything the Assembly had ever seen. Species turned against each other as old alliances crumbled. Some delegates demanded immediate investigations. Others called for Santos to be arrested for treason. A few simply sat in stunned silence, trying to process the magnitude of what they were learning. Dr. Martinez activated his tablet and transmitted detailed evidence to every delegation simultaneously. Archaeological surveys, medical records, communications logs, survivor testimonies. The proof was overwhelming and undeniable. The question before us now, Santos said when the shouting died down, is what we do with this knowledge. Do we continue the cover-up? Do we pretend that peace built on lies is worth preserving? Or do we choose justice even when it's difficult? Admiral Kethvar stood again. You're asking us to destroy the Coalition for the sake of ancient history. I'm asking you to save it, Santos replied. The Coalition I believed in doesn't commit genocide and then lie about it for 3,000 years. The Coalition worth preserving is the one that faces its mistakes and tries to make them right. General Hrethka hissed angrily. Earth has no right to judge us. You've only been spacefaring for 50 years. We've maintained galactic peace for millennia. Peace built on murder isn't peace, Captain Kim said from the gallery. It's just delayed justice. The Assembly voted 3 times that day. The first vote was whether to accept the evidence as genuine. It passed by a narrow margin. The second vote was whether to launch a formal investigation. It failed by 12 votes. The third vote was whether to censure Earth for revealing classified information. It passed by a landslide. The Assembly finds that Earth has violated its obligations as a Coalition member, Chancellor Vexthul announced. Earth's voting privileges are suspended indefinitely. Earth's access to Coalition technology is revoked. Earth ships are ordered to withdraw from Coalition space within 30 days. Santos had expected this. It was easier to punish the messenger than face the message. "We understand," she said simply. "But our offer to help the Eternum survivors remains open. Justice doesn't require your permission." As the session ended, delegates filed out in angry groups. Some species announced they were reviewing their own records, looking for evidence of other cover-ups. Others declared their full support for Coalition leadership. A few simply left without comment, unwilling to take sides in a conflict that could tear the galaxy apart. In the gallery, Admiral Chen and his team watched the chaos unfold below. "Was it worth it?" Dr. Vasquez asked quietly. "Ask me in 100 years," Chen replied. But even as Earth faced isolation and punishment, something had changed. 3 species announced they were withdrawing from the Coalition pending investigations into Project Silence. The Kelthans offered to provide medical aid to Eternum survivors. The Crystalline Collective transmitted their own evidence of Coalition crimes dating back 2,000 years. In the Outer Rim, Eternum survivors received their first official visitors in 3 millennia. Not Coalition ships come to drive them away, but human vessels carrying doctors and scientists and diplomats who wanted to help. The galaxy would never be the same. The comfortable lies that had held the Coalition together for 3,000 years were crumbling. Some species would choose truth and justice. Others would choose stability and denial. The resulting conflicts would reshape galactic civilization for generations to come. But in a small medical facility on the edge of known space, Dr. Elena Vasquez worked alongside Eternum survivors to heal their transformed people. It would take decades, maybe centuries, but for the first time in 3,000 years, there was hope. Earth had chosen justice over peace, truth over stability, conscience over convenience. They would pay a price for that choice. They would be isolated, punished, labeled as troublemakers, who couldn't be trusted with sensitive information, but they would sleep well at night, knowing they had done the right thing. And in the Outer Rim, beings of living light would finally have a chance to heal from wounds that should never have been inflicted. Justice delayed was justice denied, but justice achieved was worth any price. The galaxy had rejoiced when the war ended. Now they would learn what real peace looked like when it was built on truth instead of lies.